Hi everybody, how are you doing? That's the pizza talking. That's okay. Thank you so much for coming here on your lunch break. I'm so excited about customer experience that this year I decided to take us a little international. There is an organization called Customer Experience Association, and they actually celebrate customer experience. And there is a day called Customer Experience Day, which is October 3rd. So this year we decided to really share with the world how amazing we are at customer experience. And we decided to really truly celebrate and honor our crew members and what they do every day. We have a fantastic panel. We've been going around the world talking about sharing what we've done and learning what other brands are doing in customer experience. And we have invited a very small eclectic collection across industries of people that share our passion for the customer. But before I go, I wanted to introduce Joanna Garrity, my boss, who will open up.
So when Liliana came a couple weeks ago and said, I really think we should do this thing for customer experience, I'm like, there's a customer experience day? How cool is that? And she's like, do you think anybody will show up? Well, I think we answered that question. So thanks so much for joining us today. I mean, this is a fantastic showing. I wish I could be here. I'm doing something much more pleasant and exciting, which is doing our 2018 plan and budget with Robin. So unfortunately, I can't be here. Believe me, I'd rather be in this room than upstairs working on that. But thanks so much for being here. For our panelists joining, JetBlue's mission is inspiring humanity. And I just want to give a call out to all of the things that so many of you in the room have done for the past 6 to 8 weeks. I feel like it goes on and on and on, really living that mission of inspiring humanity. From Puerto Rico to Harvey to Irma down in Florida to our team that we've sent out to Las Vegas to support our crew members out there. I personally cannot be prouder to be part of this organization. It has been such an inspiring few weeks in the face of such tragedy. And, I think when you think about the customer experience and that caring value and that idea of inspiring humanity, what that can do to boost and propel the customer experience, it's absolutely remarkable. And I think it really goes to the heart of what we're trying to do across JetBlue, across all of our work groups, whether you're on the customer experience team or not, which is how do you find that emotional connection? How do you reach that emotional part of customers and really drive and build that loyalty. When you think about technology and what technology can do, it's awesome because it frees up time for all of us to really deliver humanity and inspire humanity. Technology enables us to kind of push things that don't add a lot of value on an app, on a kiosk, you name it, and free up the time so that we can all do what we do best and what our crew members out on the front lines do best. So just thank you. You guys have rocked it for the past few weeks. And in the face of tragedy, you hate seeing these things, but I just to say it again, could not be prouder of how JetBlue has responded and how JetBlue has set the tone and really raised the bar for other corporations to respond in a crisis like what we've seen for the past few weeks. So just a round of applause to all of you. So our customer experience strategy is delivering a personal, helpful, and simple experience. And part of that is how do we take the pain points? How do we take the choke points out of the customer experience? How do we remove all of those inefficiencies across the travel ribbon and make a much more seamless experience, make a much more streamlined experience? And all the while doing that, delivering and inspiring humanity. And in our front row, there's a group of people who have really inspired humanity over the past year. And in particular, last year we held a Blue Hero Magic Moment contest. And we challenged crew members across the customer experience team to have a little fun over the holidays. Do something special for a crew member, do something special for a customer, do something special for somebody in your community, but just do something, because if you make a difference, it can just have such a multiplying effect across our company and across the customer experience. And so I'd like to introduce the group in the front row here. Part of what we decided to do when we chose the winners, and there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of entries, and it was this kind of quick little dirty thing we threw together on the side and thought, kind of have a little fun over the holidays. It's such an operationally intense time. Maybe we can interject some excitement into it. And the responses were remarkable. Everything from, jumping in and helping people who had very little in the community to, giving bags to crew members and customers to support their holidays, to making, magical moments for people who were at their end of life. And we've recognized 10, 20, 30 people this past year for those acts of just, magic moments. And one of the ways that we were rewarding is to really pay it back and give them their own magical moments. So with each winner, we've done something special and unique that we think kind of speaks to what they might be interested in doing. And so the whole group up here has gotten to go on a boat ride. They have dinner. They're attending the Customer Experience Day, sort of a trip in New York. But I'd like to introduce everybody in the front row. If you could just stand up when I call your name. Melinda Martoli, in flight. Nope, Melinda's not here. Okay, Melinda's not here. Okay. Brenda Gray, in flight. And Brenda's great. I've flown with her before. Roxanne Pollard, in flight. Tia Cornwell, in flight. Norma Morales, airports. Mario Cabrales, airports. Melissa Rowie, but I probably mispronounced your name, but I get tons of emails from you. Melissa Rowie, airports. Linda Robinson, customer support. She's not here either, okay. And Karen Waycott, customer support. This year, we're going to do another similar contest, and you can still be eligible to win. You just got to raise the bar a little bit. But just thanks so much for making last holiday, and it took me a really long time to go through all of them. I mean, I picked all the winners myself just because I wanted to do it, and it was hundreds, and I literally was brought to tears in most of them because some of them were just so remarkably amazing. So I look forward to seeing what this year brings. But these guys, magic moments and then some. Thank you so much for what you have done. Okay, so I want to get to introducing our esteemed panelists. We've got our Magic Moment people here and our panelists over here. And what they're going to do is talk a little bit about the customer experience that they're seeing at their company and really thought leaders in the industry of customer experience. I think you've got a good mix of West Coast, East Coast, startup, data, a whole bunch of different things. We've got Zunum here, and JetBlue's made an investment in Zunum, I think with Boeing, actually, if I believe correctly, yep, through JetBlue Tech Ventures. But I want to introduce these folks. Maybe as I call your name, you can step up and take a seat here. These are our panels for today. Allegra Burnett. Allegra is a consultant and former creative director of digital media at MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art, if you didn't know what that was. She also has held roles on the customer experience team at Forrester Research, and she's just started her own business around data analytics and a whole host of other things that I'm sure she will be happy to share with us. So Alexa, if you could join us up here. Garen Moreno. Garen is the Director of Strategic Partnering at BMW Group Design Works. That sounds pretty cool. Where he leads the growth of mobility and aviation portfolio and helps leading airlines and helps equipment manufacturers and suppliers envision and create the mobility experience of the future. If you could join us up here, Garen. Healy Cipher is co-founder and CEO of Oak, which has gotten a lot of buzz recently for the Oak Mirror. Now, when I read this, I thought there might be another application for the Oak Mirror. I'll see if you guys can figure out what that is. As an interactive touchscreen mirror that lets shoppers at Ralph Lauren, Levi's, and other leading brands customize their fitting room's ambiance, explore product recommendations, and digitally seek assistance from store associates. And I thought maybe you could have like a skinny mirror in the dressing room and it might actually encourage you to buy more things. So Haley, if you could join us up here. Andrew, and I'm going to mispronounce the name, Ochoa, is a founder and CEO of Waverly Labs. Andrew's in Brooklyn. He's an innovative consumer products company created in 2014 at the convergence of wearable technology and speech translation. I should also note that JetBlue's Digital 2020 team actually shares our innovation space in New Lab with Waverly Labs, who has been over to the Brooklyn Navy Yard. I was like Boatyard, Navy Yard, Brooklyn Navy Yard to see our design space over there. Anybody else? Okay, it's definitely over there. So see Marissa if you want to hold a meeting there, because it's super cool, a little tough to get to, but once you're there, it's absolutely worth the experience. It's a really, really neat space, and I know JetBlue has access to a couple conference rooms over there if you'd like to hold a team meeting there. So Andrew, if you could join us up here. And last but not least, we have Matt Knapp, who is the Aero Chief Engineer at Zunum Aero, which is developing high-speed electric aircraft with the goal of going faster in a more affordable way that connects thousands of communities with quieter service and lower emissions. Think of disrupting the short-haul travel space. Very, very exciting stuff here. Has anybody ever been in a Tesla? Yeah, so it was described to me, your technology, as when you kind of floor a Tesla in the first 2 seconds of what you feel like. That's kind of what you've been able to do on the short haul aviation space. Zunum is an investment of JetBlue Tech Ventures, and Bonnie Simi, the president of JetBlue Tech Ventures, sits on Zunum's board. Matt, if you could join us up here. Great. So thanks so much to our panelists. Thanks to Liliana and your whole team for organizing today. And I'm sorry I have to go back to like budgets and planning. Not so fun. But I know you'll enjoy this panelist. And I can't wait to see the recorded tape because I'm sure it'll be actually very, very exciting. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks.
Thank you, Joanna. Thank you guys for coming. Just for everybody's knowledge, half of our panel actually flew for this, so we're very, very special and honored to have them over. What I have prepared is just a few questions. What I really wanted to do is also give access to you as well. So if you want to raise a hand or have a question at the end, we're going to leave a significant amount of time for that, because that's really what my point was, that I wanted to engage you on that. But before that, I'll start with a few curated questions that I have. Many companies are talking about innovation today. What's with that buzzword? Or is it a buzzword? I mean, what is the difference between just getting better? Why do we have to call it innovation? I'll start with Allegra.
Okay. Well, I think that using the term innovation is a way to kind of jumpstart you out of what you've been doing on a regular basis. Some people certainly need that more than others. But I think that that's really the way to think of it. I think the challenge becomes sometimes when you have things like innovation labs or innovation efforts, they end up becoming this thing that happens over here that doesn't get then folded back into what you're doing on a regular basis. And I think that's really where some of the interesting challenges is how do you spark those new ideas, but then ramp them in a way that they can fold back into operations and practice.
Yeah, well, you don't hear about awards for getting slightly better, but you do hear about awards for innovation. So there is a difference. For me, really, innovation is you're combining something maybe from outside of the space. And so what we've done is we've combined electric motors and airplanes. And when we first did that, it looked fun. And then when we actually went in and really looked at what this enabled and how it would change the market, it was really inspiring, which is why we started Zunum in the first place. So for us, that's the innovation. Is taking two things they may have existed before, bringing them together in a new way, and finding something new.
That's actually a great point. We, as you guys know, we did facial recognition this year, and this is exactly what happened. We didn't create anything new. We just connected things that existed before. Garrett?
So I think we use innovation so much because it's a nicer way to say it than like surviving. I don't think we have a choice. I mean, there's a cool Jack Welch quote. He says, if change on the outside is happening faster than change on the inside, then the end is near. And that just means that you have to innovate as part of what we do, but not only as a company, just as individuals. So innovation is just, I think it's like I said, it has to be like breathing. Right? We don't exist in a world where we can't innovate and we can't change. So we have to always be inventing ourselves every week, month, quarter.
ABC, always be changing.
Always be changing, right? It's true. Mm-hmm.
It's my fitting room motto, too. I'm not even a dad. I'm just full of dad jokes.
Yeah, I agree with what Matt said. I think innovation, at least in our context, innovation and disruption and lean methodology, these terms come from like startup culture, tech startup culture, and they're trying to be soaked in by established companies. I think Matt made a good point. For us, we're taking two systems which have always existed separately, speech translation and wearable technology, and combining it to a translating earpiece, which is innovative, and it hopefully will change and enhance the customer experience. And for us, that's what innovation means. It is disrupting an antiquated technology, an antiquated industry, and just innovating it to do something that it never did before.
Yeah, I guess I kind of see innovation as a dirty word in a weird way, in that it's like, hey, the innovation team's coming in. You're like, okay, you know, and it's because they're gonna be like, hey, I thought of all this crazy stuff that's not ever possible. And you're like, thanks, I thought of that too. Like,
Yeah.
and I know this because I used to run the retail innovation team at eBay, and that's what we did. And so I think one of the things that is so important when you think about innovation is realizing that it can't and shouldn't be tech for the sake of tech. It should always be solving real human problems. And one of the things I loved just up front was saying, look, the tech that we're introducing to you isn't to replace you. It's to rehumanize the experience so you can become your higher self and really give that amazing experience to connect with humans versus looking up the thing or booking the thing. And I think the extent to which we can replace the word innovation and just call it continually aspiring to create better human connections, that might be the safest replacement.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And when we started our work last year, we were a fairly new team, a couple of years only. I think that's a very big point for me and my boss and the team here is to how do we enhance the connection and not just remove it. We had a question later on, but I'm going to bring it forward because it kind of connects the conversation better. We know that people tend to connect better with things that they connect with emotionally. And I guess let's go reverse because we'll start with you. How do we, and I struggle with that honestly, how do we enhance or kind of nurture that emotional connection with the customer if we're putting so much technology as part of the experience? Because no matter how we design it, there is this human touch of these guys here, for example, that I will never be able to recreate with the machine.
Yeah, no, it's a really important question. So our flagship product is, as they were mentioning, it's this mirror that when you walk into a fitting room, it looks like a totally normal mirror, and then it comes alive and it turns into a touchscreen. And it knows what you brought in there, and it shows you other sizes, other colors, recommended items that are available, and you can request them. The reason we created this was because, well, you know that moment where you're in a fitting room and your pants are off? And you're like, those are too tight. What am I going to do? Do you just peek your head out, or do you just call, or do you put your original pair of pants on and take them off again, which, when they're this tight, is a really big pain in the butt. And so we did this thing where you could touch the mirror and it'd go out and make a request to the store. And then we had a decision to make. Does the store respond, or does a person respond? And so we decided that a person would respond. So it says, hey, oh, Nadia's coming. I see your face and I see your name. And then when Nadia came with the extra pair of pants that were appropriately sized bigger, I'd be like, oh, thank you. And I knew who it was. And so I think there's this really important balance between making things easier. So that communication to Nadia was way easier, and it was way faster, because humans just, especially now, we don't want to wait for anyone to do their job, right? And you don't want, you don't want to be looking stuff up. You want the answer just so you can give it. So how do you take the things that people hate out of there, and then let you be connected with them in a more human experience? I think that's that balance of where tech can be helpful and not in the way.
I can tell you from a wearable tech perspective that there are a lot of the companies that we engage with and that we work with and that are our partners in this wearable tech space do try to put emotion at the forefront of technology development. So for example, think about the Apple Watch. They have a sensor on there. They have this feature where you can feel the heartbeat of someone else that you're paired with. You can feel that. I think it's maybe it's a joke. I don't know.
I think it's awesome. My wife hates when I do that. She's like, stop.
I think it's a beautiful way of using technology to enhance an emotional connection. For us, as a developing pilot, which is a translating earpiece, we get questions and comments all the time from people who say, this is going to help me communicate with my spouse's in-laws, who I have never been able to speak with because they speak a different language. So I think if you think about it from that perspective, wearable, at least maybe not wearable technology, but technology can enhance the emotional experience.
I mean, it's kind of basic communication. human communication. I mean, if I just talk about technology, you will all fall asleep within 10 minutes. But if I talk about like how fun it is, or how your life can change, or how it can impact your finances, or it makes, you know, the typical, well, the fundamentals like finance, fun, food, how, like Maslow's hierarchy, like it's pretty basic. I think, you know, I had a really interesting conversation a few weeks back with an economist who's actually, he helps CEOs choose which aircraft to buy. So planning for the future. I mean, he's got a very important role for planning and strategy. And we got completely off topic around innovation and technology, and he said, you know what, he's a little older, and he tells you how it is. And he's like, you know, I'm tired of technology's conversation. It's like, technology happens so much faster than any of us and any human is able to even understand. It's more important how you're communicating the information than the actual technology itself. So like I said, like you guys are saying, the emotional benefit is the tech. I mean, you know, it's the fundamentals, I guess you would say. Actually, what he said is that we should actually spend more time focusing on how to communicate things than actually necessarily what it necessarily does, if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. I have to say, I don't know, I hope you guys are informed of what we do, but that's probably something that I was surprised by when I got the job. I thought it would be more about building things, and probably 50 to 60%, if not 70, is about communicating what we do to the customer, to the crew member, to the wider audience, external, internal. It's very interesting how much time it goes into connecting the dots and communicating it. And I agree with you on the basics, that it's foundational. I still struggle sometimes, even as a person that designs these things. I guess with the design, with the interfaces, I can mimic some sort of a guide as how you experience things. But sometimes, especially when people are in distress, and when I read the stories of these phenomenal people here, we deal with a lot of that. I don't know how a computer or technology solution can take a woman in distress and make her feel taken care of. Maybe that's coming with more and more sophisticated emotion being infused in the technology. But I don't know. I just wanted to be a little controversial here, not to say you guys are not right or anything, but there are just these cases that I still struggle with.
I'm sorry, but it doesn't make any sense. Like humans, we resist change. Like just like our nature, like change is scary. But then if you think about it, we've been able to survive for millennia, for as long as we have been able to survive, because we adapt. So we're in this really kind of, I'm not here to talk about psychology, but I always question that too. It's like we change so well, but we hate change. So I think that's just the world.
And we always want the shiny new thing, but we hate change.
We don't talk, if it's too new. Anyways.
No, maybe you're right. Honestly, like this is why we're here. I think there are just people that think that way as well, and I always try to figure out. I guess it's the rate maybe that accelerated. Would you agree with that? Would you agree that now the change, it's still there, we're still going good, but is it faster than usual, or is it just as is, and it's just because it's more obvious we are seeing it more in our everyday?
I mean, it's faster.
Yeah,
It's faster.
it's gonna
So
keep getting faster.
maybe that's what is the challenge for some people. It's not that much that.
I think the actual challenge. So you all have like, I'm assuming, who here is in customer service, like on the lines? Oh, okay. So you two, yeah. What are you guys doing all the time?
You're in the corporate headquarters, support center.
Yeah. What is? You have computers, right? That was the punchline. You have computers you use, and they're designed by a-holes who believe that B2B design is a thing. And they're like, yeah, well, like you'll teach them how to do it. Here's the instruction manual. And it's like, good luck, day one, learn it. That sucks. And so one of the things I think is on the role of technologists, and I'm sure we all think about this, is every time you design something, you have to remember that they are also a consumer all the time, and that's what's training them to interact with the physical world. And so make it fun and make it funny and make it interesting and easy so you want to use it and feel like a hero because you crushed it, versus like, what was that command to do the thing, you know?
Well, and because I was doing a lot of research on customer experience at Forrester, and one of the things that we were really noticing was this big uptick in tools and technology for employees and staff and back of house personnel. And part of that was about going back to this emotion piece of how do you help the people that the customers are interacting with have that personal emotional connection through technology. Well, sometimes it's about the technology isn't even visible. It's very much present, but it's not visible. And I think that's a big thing that we've really seen a big uptick in. And I would also say, just to finish that thought, is that do not underestimate the power of prototyping and testing and getting out there in front of people. I mean, I feel like I'm sort of stating the obvious, but it's especially as things change so quickly. There are low fidelity, quick, easy ways to test something that is either digital or physical. And the quicker you do that and get a response, the better off you are, because watching somebody interact is going to be far more useful than asking them what they think about something, because they'll tell you what they think you want to hear, not what they actually think. So I think just want to make sure to get those in.
I just don't want to.
What was the question again?
Honestly, that's okay.
Change.
It's fine. I think we were at emotions originally before we went to what we're doing at Zunum is we're designing hybrid electric aircraft, which fundamentally change the operating cost structure of the airplane, which means that you can fly much shorter distances, 100, 300, 500 miles, and do it in a cost-effective manner, and charge fares that are reasonable for that distance. So it's a high-speed regional transportation mode. And when we go out and talk to people about what we're doing, almost invariably they'll have a story of, my parents live in Redwood City, my parents live somewhere, there used to be a flight there, I can't get there anymore, now I fly through SFO, rent a car, drive all the way up. And so that connection, that's the emotional connection that we're looking to provide, is connecting people again.
Yeah. Well, going back, Allegra, to your reiteration and going to ask the customer and let them interact. In JetBlue, when we start doing anything, pretty much, we always try to imagine it through the eyes of the customer. We really leverage that kind of way of building solutions, and we always think about crew members and how they would deliver hospitality. How easy, I guess, and how would you be able to keep that customer focus when you build things?
Well, I think part of it, too, is getting as many people to have access to the customer as possible. So one of the things that we did when I was at the Museum of Modern Art is we'd go down into the lobby. We were usually up in the office, 10 floors up. We'd go into the lobby and watch people interacting with whatever it was that we were working on. And we'd also get senior staff down there. And getting a senior staff to be at the information desk answering all the questions that people come in with was eye-opening, because you could sit in a meeting and try and tell them, here are the top 3 challenges that our visitors have when they come into the lobby, and you can do that until you're blue in the face, but you get one of those people down there seeing it for themselves, and suddenly it becomes the highest priority. So I also ran a team that had designers and developers, and often developers are, at the computer, very far away. They're, working on this piece of code that is part of a project, that's part of a thing, and they don't really know what its end use is. And I think the ways that you can start to shorten the distance between the people who are working on whatever it is and the end user, customer, person experiencing it at the other, I think the more everybody feels invested in it, and the more understanding of cause and effect I think that they have.
Guys?
So the airplanes that we're designing are smaller than the big airplanes that the A320s that Airbus fly, or that you guys fly. And we are all airplane geeks, and we think these are very exciting, very cool. But we remember that the customers actually don't think that they're cool. They're really just trying to go somewhere. And in fact, they're probably fairly nervous about this little airplane thing.
Just for us, how many seats?
We are looking at anywhere between 10 and 50 seats.
Okay.
So 10 is obviously quite small. And we went out and talked to the CEO of an airline who flies a whole bunch of 10 seats. And he says, just a tip. The first thing you do, make sure that when they walk in the door, that the stairs are very solid and that the railing is solid. And that it just sets an initial impression, because in small airplanes, those are usually not. It's usually like a rope. And now you're standing on this rickety thing,
Really good point.
thinking, I'm going to fly in this? And I'm like, yes, this is great, but we're catering to the customers here.
Can I just pick up on that? Because I would say, never underestimate that point of entry, because I think, I was doing some work on designing for emotion, and it really is that sort of peak end theory, as well as like how you kick off an experience. And so peak end theory is when your memory of the experience is the peak, whether it's a high peak or a low peak, and the end. So those are the things that will kind of stick with you after the experience. But kicking it off right is also not to be underestimated.
First impressions.
So, yeah.
Totally. Yeah, there's a bunch of hotels, and this is like, they did a bunch of studies where you have the exact same hotel, equally amazing, equally fluffy bed, equally nice, whatever. And if you had to wait more than 5 minutes for the exact same hotel, you hated it. Your ratings went down by like 20%. So that initial interaction is so important. And I actually think it's all about making, like, as I'm thinking about your hats, making that person just feel important. Period. And in whatever way you can, just make them feel important. Like, there's another one about, you guys hear this with the really slow elevators in the high-rise in Chicago? These elevators were taking forever, and they got tons and tons of complaints, because that's how people started their day. And they get there and, like, have to wait for the elevator. And so instead of fixing the elevator, they just installed mirrors in the lobby. And they never got another complaint. Because people love looking at themselves, for like however long it took. So anyway.
That's perfect.
Make him feel important.
Actually, but he brings up a really good point to your world. So, when you guys, if you look at what's on the aircraft, like the onboard product, you look at the seats. So there's, say for example, you're flying internationally. You can fly with, say, Singapore Airlines and then fly with Air France, right? They both use the same type of seat, right? It's a Zodiac series seat. Maybe Singapore doesn't, but you know what I'm saying. It doesn't make the product itself. We talk a lot about it. You see a lot of branding going around this product. Oh, they're spending so much money, and this is a huge investment. But your experience in the same cylinder, in the same physical space, and the same exact seat can be totally different. And it has to do with what you're doing, right? That's the thing about it. Like, we talk about this a lot, but really, it's that touch point. It's okay, we spend a lot of money, but it's you guys are the ones who essentially make it different. And that's really good for me, especially when we're looking at the design of that cabin. We say, okay, yeah, but how is this going to help service? How is this really going to impact that interaction, as opposed to putting up walls around everybody? Maybe it makes more sense to open things up, anyways.
Yeah, no. Very true. I'm just wondering, in terms of wearables, did you have customers that you interacted, or future customers how did you design?
Yeah, on Garen's point first, you guys are doing a great job. I love JetBlue, by the way. I fly whenever I can. It's fantastic. And personally, I have a great customer experience from booking all the way to landing and taxiing, whatever else whatever other things happen in the middle. But from a wearable perspective, yes, like even as we speak, even as I am here at your customer experience day, we have customers in our office right now, beta testing, that we're doing applied research with, so we can understand. We're at this great point where we've spent 3 years plus in R&D and research and development, and just engineering and prototyping and development. And now we are just only a couple months away from shipping our first product. So we're at the stage where we can bring in our customers. We know who our audience is. We know the coffee buyer who needs to travel to South America and needs to speak to us coffee farmers, or the hotel manager who needs to speak to who needs to communicate with their hotel staff who might speak a different language. We know who our audience is, and we can bring them in and do testing right now, just months away from before shipping. So we can just fine-tune the features. We can fine-tune the user experience.
That sounds so cool. I told you I'm buying one. For my mother, so I can stop translating. 15 years I've been translating. 15 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I registered 15 years.
Okay.
She refuses to learn English. So I have one more, and then I'm going to open it to you guys. How do you anticipate the needs of the customer? Because I think that fast-forward-looking thing that Garen was mentioning earlier, some things we can develop fast, but some things would take a little bit, especially if it's regulators and legislation, to change the way people really experience life, be it shopping, be it flying, be it cars. Some things, I've been working with the government for a year, so some things just they're going to tell me you need at least 12 months. How do we know that we don't make the wrong bet, I guess is my question.
You're looking at me. Should I start?
Why not?
Yeah, well, I think that's a really good question, but I think there's a lot of different things that come into play. Certainly, like when I was at Forrester, we did a lot of customer journey mapping, and there's the current state where you figure out what's currently happening, and that's more of kind of find and fix, so it's more smaller improvements versus a sort of future state journey mapping where you're saying, what is that future experience that we want to envision? And then you sort of look at the differential as to where you are and how you might, the steps you might take to get there. So, but then you have to think about, okay, what is that future vision? What do we want to have happen? And I think part of that is, it's a combination of, research and data and sort of looking at kind of what the lay of the land is and where it seems to be heading. And then sometimes you have to kind of take these creative leaps. And I think that's where some of this, going back to the original question about innovation, that's where some of that comes in, because you have to take all the data inputs that you have to make an informed decision, but sometimes you have to leap into a little bit into the unknown with some of those things. But you do it in an informed way. It's not just like, I'm going to pick that. It's more thinking, which way is the wind headed, and how do we sort of go where that's going.
We've actually got a very easy time of this because the fastest way for us to figure out where we would have potential customers is to go get the list of all the airports that have lost service in the last 2, 5, 10, 15 years. Those people wanted to fly, and they don't have the option anymore. And once we get through all of those, there's a whole bunch more on the list, too.
Just really good.
I'll give an answer, but before I say it, that's what's so awesome about what Matt and his team at Zinn were doing, is it completely opens up a whole new market for a lot of what you're doing for other people within the industry, because then all of our regional airports now become service destinations as well, which is awesome, right? Not that Hawthorne is an amazing place to fly out of, but it's it's like some suburb in LA, but still, it can be. And that's what gets me so excited about what you're doing. As part of the BMW group, there is I would call it a strategic philosophy, and it's called Fixed Stern. And essentially what it translates is into, like, say, fixed star or North Star, if you want to translate it. Essentially what it is based on all the information that you have now, a lot of the trend forecasting, future forecasting, you can kind of pull out some constants, and you can say, okay, we feel that the future is going to be like this, and then put the future, say, 7 years out or 6 years out, right? Traditionally, automotive cycles are about 7 years, right, for brand new vehicles. So 7 years out, but that's not the hard part. That's kind of the easy part. It's the gamble, right? Okay, it feels right. What fixed star is basically you plot the points which you need to do to get there. So strategically, how do you get there? So although you can have a step for the future, you build in flexibility. You say, okay, if that's the future, the first step to be able to get there would be to do this, and you focus on that as the next step. And so as the future is shifting, you can constantly make some micro adjustments to get there, and that's actually how the group has maintained its growth.
And I would just add to that, I think that having that point, that North Star point, not be form-based, right? It's not about what technology is in 7 years. It's like what's the goal of what you want to have happen in 7 years, and then because to your point, everything will change along the way, and so it's not like I'm going to build this X in. Well, except in your case, I think that it's a longer time. But in terms of just thinking about digital technology and things like that, it's when you're thinking that far ahead, you can't tie to technology. You have to tie to an aspiration, I think.
Real world. It's actually right now. It's funny because if you talk about this autonomous vehicle world, it's super easy to design for that autonomous world. It's super easy because there's no regulations. Everybody can drive autonomous cars. I mean, all of a sudden, if you look at what it would actually take in the transition, like what happens when half of us are in autonomous vehicles and half of us aren't, like that freaks me out. And that's just, but think about it. I mean, I was in an Uber today, and he had on all these devices on his car that he bought for like $40, which is like a new camera. And I'm thinking, what if you can spend $50 and turn your car into autonomous? So all of a sudden you start thinking that it's the transitions that are the hard parts. Like the North Star is the easy one, but those spaces to get there. That's me not being that.
Well, I never thought of that transition phase, but you're right. It's going to happen when summer
thing to
flights.
manage.
Yeah.
I like the idea of a North Star. That's really good. For us, look, we're very customer centric. We have customers in our office now going through a whole user experience to understand what their needs are. But for us, it doesn't stop there, right? Even after we ship in a couple months, even after we launch the software goes live, we are still a customer centric organization. And we still will research them. We'll watch them. We'll bring them into the office. We'll track their data and look at metrics so that we can understand how they're using the software, how they're using the system, so that we can then fine-tune the experience for them even after we've shipped.
Last but not least.
Just make everything simple, fast, and fun.
That's easy.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's it. You don't want to do stuff you don't want to do, so make it fast. Make it fun, so make you laugh. By the way, humor leads to creativity, I've learned recently. So if I'm feeling like I have like a block, I just like do a bunch of memes in a row, I'm like, yeah. And make it easy, like no instruction manuals. Make it so obvious how to use it that you're like, yeah, this is great. And that's how you got it. I mean, I think those 3 things, that's like the whole game for humans.
No matter what you do. That's interesting.
You worry about the effect you're having on people's long-term attention. Oh, what was I saying?
Yeah. No, I know.
I guess I've been reading these books now about the system and how like you change one element and then the system changes and all that stuff. So I'm like, okay, let's say the cars start being autonomous. What else would happen? You know, with that, you're going to trigger another effect in the system and then another one. So that co-flexion that you're saying about the North Star is great, but it's kind of like you need to have a team almost that keeps thinking about that as well as an organization. Because you might be creating something that might come back as a boomerang and you didn't even know.
The unintended consequences
Yeah.
of your technology are real. And that's just, I think you just have to accept it. I don't
Yeah.
know, model it out. I look at drive-thrus, I'm like, what? Like, where are we there? What are you going to do when the car goes and picks up its coffee
How about
for
like
you?
the internal combustion engine? Think of all
Yeah.
the side effects that's had.
Yeah.
Every war ever, oil
It's
infrastructure,
a big
terrorism.
Terrorism.
That,
See?
I mean, it is on the
Just think
list.
about it.
Okay. It's on the list. Okay, guys. Questions from the audience. Don't be shy. We have one in the back. The mic runner is behind you.
Hello. So I'm just sitting here thinking about, the room here, like you asked the question, who sits on a line and answers customer calls? None of us do because we're in the corporate support headquarters. So our customers are the crew members that work at JetBlue. And so I'm thinking about everything you're saying from the lens of how, our customers are treated. And I'm wondering from your perspective, do you think there ever gets a point where your technologies become too customer-centric and that we forget about the other half of that emotional equation, which, as most of you have said, are the crew members and what they bring to that? But I'm wondering from your perspective in developing this technology, like how much thought is getting put into that other half of it?
Yeah, just to jump in there, is like, basically there's 3 reasons new tech fails in any experience I've ever had. The first one is infrastructure, which is obvious. Like the Wi-Fi doesn't work, which we've all experienced that one.
Oh, yeah, we have.
Yeah. That's real. But the second one is basically people who are having to do the technology, they're like, yeah, this sucks. And they just won't do it. And they'll find every possible reason to not do it. And I'm sure we've all thought of ways we've done this. And so what we actually do is before we launch a product into a retail store or whatever, we'll do focus groups with actual staff, like stylists and associate and whatever. And until they are hugging it, saying, I'm not leaving until this comes into my store, we won't ship it because otherwise it's 100% going to fail. So, I mean, I think it's a basic tenet of building successful businesses now is you have to make your life easier when you're on the associate side. I don't know what the word is. Because it translates into everything. Like if you're like, oh, this sucks, you're not going to be like, hi, how are you? You're like, what? Because you're already pissed off that this experience sucks. So I think it's center to everything, for sure.
We have a question in the front. Sorry, you're going to add to me.
Go ahead.
You kind of touched on it already, but I'd love to know where you get your research from. Like you already put your North Star
company,
out.
of course, the research.
Where do you get the research for where you want to go?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm joking, having just worked at a research company. But I do think, the research comes from all kinds of different places, right? So it comes from what your competitors are doing. It comes from what adjacent industries are doing. It comes from your customers. So I think it comes from analytics about what you're doing. So I think that the data and research, there's no kind of one, like, if you get this piece of data, you're golden. I think that really having a varied level of kind of research and testing that you use at different points and different times. So there's kind of like evergreen research, right? That may be like general research about human behaviors that don't change a lot over time versus like A/B testing 2 different ways to show the website, right? So those are very different levels of research. So I'm sort of not answering your question because, you know, I think that there are many different kinds. It really depends. The thing is, what is the question you're trying to solve or the problem you're trying to solve? And then the research will come out of what that question or problem is.
I can just tell you as a tech startup, we're always on fragile ground because there's always so much, technology is always moving. And as a startup, you have limited resources. You don't have like a huge, 150-person customer experience team designed just to manage the crew members.
7.
So our research is always evergreen. As Allegra put it, we are always mining data on news sites or media and press and publications. We are hiring outside research teams to do some research for us, whether it's on a market scale, market landscape, competition scale, or and then we just use professional research groups like Forrester or some other teams, CBC and things like that out of Boston, for some like larger scale research. But as a startup, we're always like just reading and consuming data to understand what's happening out there.
Just to add on to that as well, I think as individuals, I mean, you may not be solving for a new product that you need to have a lot of research to support it. But as individuals, how you integrate that maybe into what you're doing or maybe to bring up new ideas. What I've always found is some of the best ways to do like research as an individual, of course, yes. Anything sitting at your desk doing research with websites and so forth. But also just talking to people and asking questions. You can learn so much because there's a lot. The research research is actually quite cheap. Insight is actually very expensive. So you can get a lot of research, you can get a lot of data, but that's just like meh. So if you talk to somebody who's got a lot of experience, just having a 45-minute conversation, which is already difficult in itself, with them, you can learn so much that research would take you years to get. And just as individuals, what's going on? Even people within your company, mentors or not, what they're doing, that can teach you a lot too.
And the people who do the research, that's the approach that they take. Because when we work on reports for Forrester, it's like, yes, you're pulling in all these data points, but then you're actually going and interviewing different companies about how they're doing it to basically either verify or tweak, kind of what your hypotheses are. So I 100% agree with that.
That's a good point. Okay, we have 2, one here. Whoever gets to the mic first gets the first one.
Hi, how are you? Just a quick overarching general question is that as great as technology is, and I love technology, I could picture people in a dressing room screaming, I want the blue pants, not the purple shirt, right? And then his wearable technology, if you could talk to the mirror and say, mirror, I want the blue pants. Because I could see people touching the screen. And it's not, how you like when you touch your phone and it's never the right letter that it's on? I could picture small purple, large blue jeans, small purple shirt shows up. I could just kind of picture that. And then I could see, well, if I could talk to the mirror and it could say, oh, is this what you want? I could say, no, that's not what I want. Instead of like breaking the mirror in 1,000 pieces.
Mirror on the wall.
So it's just kind of like integrating the two over there.
Totally. Well, you're also pointing a really important trend, which is like when it comes to that in the adoption cycle of new technology, the really early stuff, it always is not as good as you want it to be. So I was one of the nerds with like the first pocket PC with a little stylus and like the keyboard, and you're like, and it never worked the way I wanted it to. And I'm like, anyway, that is part of the challenge, and it's actually really, really, I think maybe the biggest challenge with new tech because you go as a small, 10, 50, 100-person company or team with a new idea, and the first time you do it, there's one thing that is going to be 100% true. It's not going to be right. Like you have to continue to make it better, but everyone wants it to be perfect out of the gates. And so that's actually the third reason everything new tech fails is time horizons. Is as you have a new idea, you aren't given the amount of resources to actually continue to get it right. So it's a really, really important point you brought up.
And voice interaction is just going to get bigger and bigger. So brought up another point.
Yeah, it's a good point. I like it. We can do business if you want. We can help you with your speech needs.
Right.
You should have seen our first kiosks in San Juan. Nobody here except for my team has actually seen them. We would like ask for it to print the back tag and it would not print them. Or it would print, you would say 2 back tags and it would print 1. We had people, a lobby full of people being like, this just does not work.
Totally.
But it was the first time we used it. By the time we got to JFK, it was printing enough, it was accurate. But the first few weeks, we didn't sleep, and it was very, very hard.
Totally.
San Juan, by the way, if you ever want to launch something, shout out to Puerto Rico. These guys were so open. I would be like, but it's the first day. And they're like, okay. That was very, very important for us to continue the faith. No, honestly.
That's great.
Because New Yorkers are not as forgiving as just face it, I would be super afraid to do that. Next question.
Hello. You mentioned during this panel that change is an inevitable thing, or else there's eventual extinction. You also mentioned that people don't like change. Would you mind sharing with us different timeframes in each of your work where you had to develop incremental change for your customers, and over a prolonged period of time, and what that looked like within your groups, and what the biggest learning experience was from implementing that?
Yeah.
Should we just go down the line? I can start, I guess.
Okay. The fast thinker.
I can go. I want
No,
to
actually, well, so it was interesting because I spent 12 years working at the Museum of Modern Art overseeing the website. And when I got there, it was a bunch of static HTML pages. There were 5 works from each department in the collection online. And when I left, it was a whole different world. But I actually came there from working with a consulting firm. And what was interesting to me was, I now owned this site, right? And so you could do something new, but you couldn't walk away from it. So it was a really interesting thing in terms of thinking about innovation, but in a way that you can sustain it. And going into new changes, either thinking, okay, this is going to intentionally be something that we don't have to keep and maintain. It's an experiment versus something that has to evolve the site over time. And so it really changes how you think about how your team is organized, and also how you work with outside consultants as well, and different sort of innovation projects and groups and things like that. So it was, I think it's about taking those small steps to evolve something over time. Yes, there are kind of bigger, projects along the way, but you really have to think, okay, what happens after day 1 of this project? Who owns it? What happens to it? How do we maintain it? What's the sort of sunsetting of it if we decide that it's got a shelf life of some period of time? So.
For us, it's a little different in terms of who is the customer and the innovation. So we have an end goal, which is an electric airplane, and there's a lot of little steps along the way. That product is our North Star, and that's 5 or 6 years out. And there's a lot of people that need to agree that this is a good idea, and most of all the FAA. And so I've been talking to the FAA for 3 years, so that gives them enough warning, maybe, hopefully. And so we would have conversations along the lines of, well, you'll have batteries, right? Yes, the batteries will be safe, of course. But we need to take them out of the airplane frequently and put them back in because batteries don't charge very quickly. So you need to think of them more like fuel. And you could see the gears turn. But only mechanics can take things out of the airplane. Well, no, that's not going to work because you don't need mechanics to fuel an airplane. So this very slow, break the change down, but figure out all the steps along the way. And get people comfortable with them one at a time. Because if we come up with the whole thing, now here's an electric airplane, this battery swaps in and out, and then they would be saying they're going, no.
So I'll talk about it from a product perspective. We're at this stage now, as I mentioned earlier, where we're shipping in a couple of months. We have released some of the software in an app version for beta testing months ago. And we use that feedback from our customers to understand how we developed it versus how they're actually using it. And then so we'll use that, just that research to then refine the product. But then we'll make big changes to the product, to the device itself. Like maybe we'll move a button around, or maybe we'll add 2 microphones instead of 1 microphone. Maybe it doesn't connect the way they thought it would connect, and so it has to connect a different way. And so all of these things are going to have an impact once the customer experiences it. And that's going to be a change which they're not expecting. And so the way we're mitigating that is by, 1, being transparent, We communicate with them regularly. We send them blog updates, email updates, newsletters, whatever we have to do aside from like actually calling them, right, to let them know that this is what the product is going to look like, this is how it's going to work, this is how it's going to operate. And then two, we bring them in just to make sure that they're bought in, which is part of what we're doing now. We bring them in for this research phase that we're in now to make sure that they are on board and the changes that we make aren't going to be so abrupt to them that it's going to just like break the entire experience.
I'll give you it's a story about eBay because I think it's kind of fun about how humans work. So there's this one day where one of the designers was like, the yellow background sucks. We should make it white. So they just flipped the switch, and the next day it was white, and sales plummeted. Everyone hated the white background, hated it. And so they made this really simple program where every day for 60 days, it got a little less yellow and a little more white, and sales were totally fine. So I think it's worth thinking about the fact that humans, like, we're kind of designed that way. It's not like breathe underwater. You're like, okay, gills. Like, it will take thousands of years. I don't know. That's a really stupid example, but that actually wasn't helpful at all either. Probably just more confusing. Slowly, it's like when you tell a story, right? You get the foundation elements, you do character building, so by the ending, you're really into it. It's like that with any technology. You want people to slowly, if I use this thing, and this one, it teaches me this, then the next thing I use should also use that same principle, so I'm not having to relearn every time. And that's how you get to really big changes, is you do little wins. So it's that, kind of initial win and constant reinforcement. Another fun example, sorry, one last thing.
Go.
Is, so when we first put the mirrors in the fitting room, people just didn't use them. We were like, oh, shit. The whole company's over. And so my CTO came from Xbox, and he was like, okay. We got to treat this like a game. I have an idea. You guys just got to trust me. We're like, yeah, go for it. So he built this thing where when you walked in, the mirror would blind you. It just go a little too bright. And everyone was like, oh, whoa. And we open up a lighting menu, and they change the lighting, and the lighting would go down, and everyone was like, oh, I know how to use this now. And then they want to play the game. And so it's like that, that initial win and then constant reinforcement to play the game. It's something along those lines. That's the Gil thing I was trying to get to.
Thank you. That was very. Last question, because I think we're running out of time. Very quickly, what I wanted to finish with is, have you seen anything lately from any brand that's just a bold change in customer experience or customer anything that kind of stuck with you, something you've read, or just a brand that you're impressed by?
Well, I'm really curious to see what happens with the new Apple stores, because they're taking, they have the highest revenue per square foot of their retail stores, and they're completely revamping them and putting in a lot of space that is not actually product space. It's education space, and it's interaction space. It's people as opposed to technology. And so it's a big, bold move, and I'm really curious to see how it turns out. It's early days, so there isn't a lot of data yet, but it's kind of fascinating to take something that, as you look at it, isn't broken if they're making that much money and per square foot, and then rethinking it for where the future is going.
Maybe not a slightly sidetracked example, but of all the weird companies to be somewhat innovative, I'm going to call out GM. And not for electric cars in this case, but for ride sharing. Because here's a company that has spent decades marketing to you, the driver, and how cool this car is. And then they're suddenly seeing Uber and Lyft and ride shares take off, and they think, oh, people don't want to drive anymore. And instead of screaming in terror and coming out with a big muscle car, they started sponsoring those companies. And they started having cheap leases for Uber drivers. And then they started buying self-driving technology because they could see that writing on the wall.
Yeah, on that note, GM.
GM.
And they're also doing really interesting studies on giving the Uber drivers or the drivers access to these electric vehicles in particular, to find out really what's their, does it actually incentivize them to drive more because you're not driving with traditional gas. That's really exciting. They've done a great job. I think, I'm not just saying that because I'm here. JetBlue is actually one that for me is, I think, no, I'm being honest. I could be, I don't know if I'd say in front of Delta, but I could be in Delta too. No, but I'm serious though, because a couple things. On that note, what you're mentioning is the evolution of the world on how we're moving ourselves and being moved is we're transitioning from this traditional, especially here in the United States, where you buy a vehicle and you own that into a potential world where there's this idea of mobility as a service, right? And when I look at the airline industry, you guys already do that. You already provide mobility as a service. I don't say, hey, I gotta go to LA this afternoon. Can you fly me on an A321neo? Like, nobody says that, right? They just said, get me to LA between, whatever, 10 a.m. or whatever. And so when you look at the future of what you do as individuals and the big picture on providing that service element to moving people, I think is fantastic. And why I suggested that you guys are a brand that have designed some very interesting things is also because of what JetBlue Tech Ventures is doing, looking outside of just the aircraft itself. That is wonderful, you guys. There's no other airline right now who's doing that out in the open. They're going to be coming up out of the woodworks really fast, but that's a big step, and I'll be proud to be on that part of that organization.
Yeah.
It's up to you.
I agree with Gary. You guys are doing a great job, by the way, with that entire experience. I think Disney is really forward-looking. They're doing a lot of things with AR, augmented reality, and virtual reality, to enhance the customer experience. And you see that a lot. You see that just in general with the entertainment industry. They're adopting the AR and the VR software and technologies and hardware and systems and that kind of stuff to enhance the movie-going experience or just the resort experience or whatever. And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I think, anyone here wears Zara, shop at Zara? Yeah. Dude, they kill the game. That guy's the richest homie on the planet, by the way, who started that. Oh, and I think everyone, I obviously live in retail, so that's all I think about. And everyone's like, oh, e-com's destroying retail. Actually, fast fashion crushed it. That's what changed the whole game. This is a fun fact. You know that in the US, we have the most over-retailed nation on the planet. 46 square feet of retail space for every man, woman, and child, which was like my first apartment. And the next closest is the UK with 9. And so they realize you can't compete on, like proximity, selection, price, big stores, a lot of stuff, great deals. You got to compete on urgency and service and an experience. And I actually think that's really relevant to this industry as well. I mean, you are going to be the reason that this company succeeds. It's going to be because you have amazing service. You are people like you in the front who I can imagine have done incredible things at moments of really intense challenges for customers. And that's what's going to win. It's going to be that service and that experience. It's not going to be the fact that you have the same chair that everyone else has, or the fact that you, I don't know, give coffee that's a little warm, whatever it is. It's going to be you. And I think that's an important thing to remember.
It's a great way to end. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I hope you enjoyed it.